Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. It's Stephen here for another episode of the Idiot Quilter Presents, and today I have a very special guest with me, Robin. Robin, how do I say your last name?
Bogart, as in Humphrey.
Oh, okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
Robin Bogaert, and she is the owner and operator of Quilting in the Loft, and we're going to talk about her business and about her YouTube channel and other things in a little while. But first of all, where are you located, Robin? What's your general vicinity?
I'm in Waterloo, sort of on the border of Waterloo and Kitchener.
So Robin is a neighbor because I live in, well, on the opposite. She lives on the west side of Toronto. I live on the east side of Toronto, and we're probably about an hour and a half away from each other. So it's nice to interview a fellow Canadian, and also nice to interview somebody that's from my own province and not that far away. So we're going to get started here. How long have you been quilting?
Since really good question. I have actually been quilting since I was about 4. I kind of learned at the hand of a great grandmother, but formally I say since 1998, so 25 years. Because I was a child and I wasn't formally trained. I was trained by grandparents. And then in 1998, as an adult, I took a bigger interest in it, started taking some formal classes. So,
Okay, so you're not new to the block, that's for sure.
no,
You've
not at
been
all.
for a while, so I'm sure you have lots and lots of experience.
Yeah.
And I do know that you're a very accomplished long armor as well, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But for before I do, I think you've just answered this question, but I don't know if you can give us any more detail. How did you get started? Well, you said you were taught by a great grandmother at the age of 4, but then you said
Yeah.
you got more formally into it in the late 90s. So what inspired you to
Um,
to at that level?
a whole lot of things, really. I've been a very consummate crafter for years and years and years. Kind of didn't play with toys. I kind of crafted more than anything. Um, and I had a grandmother who was very influential with that. She would always want me to glue things or decoupage or sit and watch her sew or work with beads. And so I've always been more interested in crafting than playing. And I
Right.
guess craft is now a form of play for me and for a lot of people that are crafters, right? So, yeah. And then in grade 8, I had an elective in high school. And I know that a lot of the high schools now aren't offering that kind of thing, but it really helped me because it was an elective on quilting. And right away I was drawn to it because I had that 4-year-old background and influence from grandparents that talked about quilting all the time. And so I took an elective and then kind of like did a hand piecing project, put it in my back burner in my head and thought, I think I'm going to deal with this later in life. And as an adult, I had 2 little girls. And so I wanted to make them quilts. And then I decided I was just going to take some formal classes. Took a formal class. A year later, I opened a quilt shop, which is a huge leap from
Right.
taking one formal class to opening a quilt shop. And I opened the quilt shop in my home, and I had a couple of teachers available in the area in Windsor at the time. That's where we lived, who offered to teach for me out of my shop. That was actually for about a year. It based in my home, and it was kind of like my research model for opening an actual shop. And I realized that Windsor was a big area where there wasn't too many quilt shops. Opened a quilt shop, and the rest is history. And I'm been, very dedicated to the quilting industry since then.
Right. So there's a lot here to unpack in what you've
Mhm,
just said. So you opened a shop
mhm.
and you were teaching classes. So before we get a little bit further into that, I just want to back up a second and ask you, you said your great grandmother was a great influence. Was
Mm.
there any other quilters in your family or any other influences that you had when you first
My
got?
mother was a sewer, but she was a garment sewer. So I mean, I saw her a lot sewing like garments, and so I was always fascinated by the sewing machine. And then I actually inherited my grandmother's sewing machine, which I call my boat anchor. It's a because it's so heavy. It's a big old white machine, but it's lovely and it's wonderful to work with denim and heavier. It will sew literally through boat tarp, like it's incredible. So I still have that machine. But yeah, it was just the whole influence of really a family of sewers. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said too, you did a lot of crafting as a child as well. And you want to know something? I have been finding as I do these interviews that a lot of quilters have come from a background in crafting. Myself, I did too. I did a
Mhm.
lot of crafting as a kid and right into my adult years and things like that. So I think, quilting is just a natural extension of our whole crafting environment that we've cultivated over the years. So
Yeah.
do you have a favorite creation? You must have made a lot of
Oh,
over time.
yes. I have a couple of. Can I show you them?
Oh, yes, please do.
Okay, so I have one on my iPad because my most of my quilts are tied up in trunk shows
Mhm.
or they're with my daughters
I
or family members.
mean,
So I'm gonna see if you'll be able to see this quilt.
okay.
It's called a painter's palette because my youngest daughter is an artist, and so I wanted to do a quilt for her when she got married. So my two all-time favorite projects, top of the list, are painter's palette, and then another quilt which was called from So Kind of Wonderful. Those girls, it's kind of like a wedding ring quilt. I don't know if I have a picture of that one, but I'll show you the painter's palette one.
Yeah, should please do.
So my youngest daughter was one of those people that got caught up in the whole pandemic, was trying to get married and couldn't get married,
Mhm.
and then finally got married in 2021. And this was the quilt that I made for her. And the reason I think I enjoyed it is because I'm not a fast quilter. I like to take my time. I love the process.
Mhm.
And so it took me a lot of time, but I also had an extension of time because of the pandemic,
Right.
whether we wanted the extension or not. And so I'll try and show you the picture. Just gonna unplug this, but can you see that?
Oh, yes, actually, very well. Yeah, that is
Okay.
beautiful. It almost looks like a New York beauty.
Yes, it does. It's just kind of set differently, a little bit
Yeah.
differently, and it's all paper pieced.
Oh,
I do love paper piecing. Um, I don't really have as much time as I'd like to paper piece because I feel like I'm always kind of doing teaching samples or,
right.
working on something. And then there was another quilt, and it's called it's a wedding ring quilt. You'll see it on the gallery on my website if
Mm.
somebody wants to have a look at it. Um, and it's kind of got a gray background. It's got orange and turquoise in it, but it's kind of looks like a wedding ring. That was my other favorite one. I mean, I think they're my favorite ones also because they're meaningful.
Right.
Metro Rings one was just a piece project, kind of a modern way to do a double wedding ring. And so they were meaningful that way. And, through the process of actually making them, I'm thinking about my daughters getting married and, what that means to them and their commitment. And so I think that's why they were, like, for me, my favorite projects. And I have two more,
Okay.
if you don't mind bearing with me.
No, no, go for it. Go for it.
Okay. I'm going to grab them. I love to thread paint.
Mm.
I teach thread painting. And so I have a real passion for it. And I know that there are embroidery machines that do this with the push of a button.
Not the
I,
same though.
um, for me, I like embroidery. I really do enjoy embroidery machines as well and what they offer. It's a totally separate kind of way of feeling about how you work.
Yeah.
So I'll show you two. I really believe in taking classes, and both of these are from classes. I'll show you the first one. It's actually a kind of a mini trunk show. Just grabbing it off my ironing table. So this is
Oh, that is really unique.
so it's my first thread painting project, and it was from a class online by Libby Lehman. She's the lady who wrote the book called Thread Play,
Okay. Yeah.
and she's a pretty famous American quilter. I did it on the Quilt Show from that platform. I took the class online way before the pandemic, as a matter of fact, and so that got me into thinking about thread painting. I don't know if you can see it, but this part here is thread painted,
Yeah.
and then
Mhm.
this part here is yarn that's couched on, and that got me inspired. And I took a class with David Taylor Quilts and did this cardinal, which I call Northern Cardinal.
Oh, that's really lovely.
That's on my website. It's on the about page. It's all
Yeah.
thread painted. So it's fused applique and then thread painted. So this is Northern Cardinal by day, and you can see the thread work on the back, Northern Cardinal
Oh
by
yeah,
night.
I see that. That's how you
Yeah,
get the shading and everything on it.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
really nice.
So about 40 shades of king tut thread.
Now that must have taken you some time to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I took the class with David Taylor, and he teaches needle turn applique, which I'm familiar with, and I've done some, but it's just not my technique.
Right.
Um, I like hand sewing, but really only English paper piecing.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
So there was three of us in the class that wanted to fuse, and I had it in mind all the way along that I was going to thread paint after I
right.
finished the fusing process. And so he kind of set us off in in a corner and said, you three ladies that are fusing are called the refusers
Yeah.
because we didn't want needle turn applique."
Right.
Yeah.
You're the
But
rebel.
anyways, it
You're the
was so
rebel.
much fun and I learned so much from him, and there's benefit in every class, even if it's not quite what you want to do, you can
Yeah,
modify it. That's
for
what's
sure.
lovely about being so creative.
Yep, that's very true. And it's you got to make it your own too. You got to, your comfort level or your challenge level, whichever
Yeah.
it is that you want, and just do your thing. I mean, if a teacher turns around and tries to, like the old, you've got to color inside the lines, then that's just stifling to anybody's creativity. I think, let them
Yeah.
take the basic concept and run with it and see what they come up with. So, um, you do paper piecing, you've done English paper piecing, you've done thread painting, you've made quilts. So how would you, if you had to give yourself a label, and this is a very unfair question, I know that, how would you describe yourself as a quilter? Meaning,
Mm.
do you lean towards the more traditional or the modern or free form or experimental? How would you label yourself?
I would label myself, and I was asked this question yesterday. I was out at a little quilting event in the community, and I was asked what type of quilter I am, and it was really a hard question to answer.
It is.
Right. I'm transitional, I think.
Okay, and that
So
means
rooted in tradition, but I'm gearing more towards more modern stuff
okay.
and transitional, and I would say really experimental.
Yeah, I was
And
going to say that I would think if I was going to give you a label just from the short time we've been talking here,
mhm,
that's the label I would give you because of what you were saying just a moment ago about
yeah,
that class you took and how you guys decided to do your version of what was being taught. So yeah, experimental is a
yeah,
good term,
very experimental, and sometimes my experiments fail.
but that's how we learn, right?
Yeah, that's how we learn. And
There's
that's
no
how we learn
failures.
to try things. We'll learn what we don't like and what we do like. So,
Yeah, there's no such thing as failing at something. It's just
mm,
a learning moment, kind of a
yeah,
thing.
one of my favorite expressions is to allow joy to overwhelm perfection.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it holds very true to those of us that are quilting because, as I said, this question was a very unfair question
Mhm.
because we really can't, each individual cannot be labeled because we all have our own desires, our own likes. And, you may start out as a traditional piecer because you're learning the basics of it, but you will expand out there and find what you like and what you might want to try. And if you keep challenging yourself, well, I think it keeps your brain going. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, most of us quilters are in an older category where it's very important at the stage of our life that we keep the brain going. And I think
Mhm.
quilting helps with that. So I'm assuming you are in your studio right now in
Mhm.
your sewing area. Can you describe it for us? I know that, are you in a loft? Because you call
Yes,
it
I
quilting
am
in
in
a
a
loft.
loft, and that's why it's quilting in the loft.
I noticed your ceiling looks like it's kind of sloped
It
down.
looks close, but it's really not. Like
Oh,
I still have a lot of space above my head. It just
okay, well,
looks
that's
close
good,
because of the white ceiling.
right?
Don't really know what to do to not make it look close, but so I'm above my kitchen, and then I have a studio tour on my YouTube channel,
Okay.
which people can go to if they want to look at my studio tour. Um, And then the other part, which is over here, is a big long section because I'm above a bungalow. And in the long section, I have my long arm and all of my supplies, and I call it my hoard.
Yes, we all have a hoard
Yeah.
with it too, and we have to
Yeah.
be careful with that word. But okay, it's really nice though that you're able to have your long arm in the same room as where you've got your sewing machines and all of your other things. You know, a lot of
Mhm.
people would give their eye teeth to be able to do that. I have a
Yeah.
big sewing area, but my long arm won't fit in here. It's in a separate room. But
Oh,
I'm
okay.
lucky that I have the ability to have a separate room to have it in there as well.
Yeah.
So talking about then equipment and things, how many sewing machines do you have?
Oh my God, I can't count them. I have a featherweight like you have. I noticed
Okay.
recently that you just got a
Yes,
featherweight.
got a featherweight.
I have my grandmother's white. Oh my God, I could go on all day.
Well,
Um,
you don't
I have
have
my
to
long
worry
arm
about,
machine.
yeah, you don't have to give us
Uh,
an exact number. It's suffice to say that that's a trick question because if you're a
I have
real,
5 Berninas.
oh my God, but you're a Bernina ambassador, aren't you?
I am, yes, yes. So I have 5 Bernina domestic machines, one of those 5 is a serger. So 4 Bernina domestic machines, and then I have the Bernina long arm as well. Yeah,
So
yeah.
what's your favorite machine?
Definitely my long arm.
Mhm.
Um, I have a little, I don't know if you can see it, but can you see it
Yep. Yep.
right there? It's a little Bernina 350. It's my take to class when I'm teaching
Right.
machine. It's a little workhorse and I absolutely love it. Um, so yeah, that's a favorite machine too. I would say that and my long arm.
Is your
And then
long
I have
arm
a
a Bernina?
200, it's a Bernina Q20 Bernina with a studio frame,
Yep.
which I absolutely love. It's kind of been a dream um, to have it. I had a long arm previously, which my oldest daughter now has in her studio. But I really do love my Q20. It's a lovely machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Janome boy, but that's
That's
only,
great too.
well, that's only because that where when I first got into this, the only place I went to, the only quilt store in the area, and they were a Janome dealer. And
Yeah.
since then, I have found other sources for Berninas. I just haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet, as I say, for the Bernina,
Yeah.
because
I believe there is Larry's sewing machine near you. Do you know Larry's?
yes, in Ajax.
Yes.
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's Fourth of Quilting too. That's not that far from me either. That
Okay. Yeah. That's a great store.
yeah.
Great store. Awesome.
So let's talk about you've kind of already hinted at this. What's your favorite technique?
I would say definitely thread painting, but free motion quilting as well,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Yep, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah. And that's
And
what I teach. So that and ruler work with free
yep.
motion quilting. Mhm.
And how
Yeah.
about your favorite tool? And not
Um,
talking about machines.
oh, okay. Let's talk about, I've just bought myself a stiletto.
Ah, yes.
I've not really used a stiletto that much. And um, I'm thinking, wow, I really missed out on something good.
Yep. I know how you feel.
Um,
I feel
yeah.
the
So
same. Yep.
it's actually sitting beside your little gnome that you gave us at Quilt Canada. Look at that.
There we go. My little pincushion clip
Yeah.
holder gnome.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, now I lost my stiletto. Can't lose that.
Yeah.
I'm really finding that the stiletto is handy. Oops, sorry about
Yes.
that.
That's right.
Um, and also, I think I bought just recently a turntable type cutting mat, and I really like that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a couple of rotating mats as well, and I really like those. And but I agree with you on the stiletto. I didn't
Mhm.
have one at first, and then I got one, and I use that thing for so many things all the time. I mean, I
Yeah.
can't live without it. So yeah, it's a great tool. And people are probably wondering when you said about Quilt Canada. Well, I was at Quilt Canada in Halifax in June, and Robin was there as well, and she joined in for our little meet and greet that we had, and that's how we got this whole thing going
Yeah.
on here as well. Although I had seen you previously on YouTube as well, but so you weren't complete stranger to me. But
Okay.
anyways, I just thought I'd put that in context for people. So if
Yeah.
you had all the money in the world, is there a piece of equipment or something you would invest in that's related to, you know, your whole business and your quilting passion?
Um, I had my ankle replaced in 2017, and so I'm standing at a studio frame. So I think one of the things, if I had all the money in the world, is I would buy a Q16 with a hydraulic lift table,
Oh, yes.
just so that I have the option to sit down. I'm in the market right now looking for a drafting chair that has wheels on it so that
Mm,
I can sit at my studio frame. Although I do enjoy it, it's just that it's starting to bother my ankle.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's one of the things. And then you said equipment, but I kind of want a chef.
Well, we all want that.
Yeah.
True, because
I
then
don't
they
know if
can,
that's equipment, but I kind of want somebody to cook meals because
well, it's eating into your quilting time, right? If someone was to do the meat
exactly.
for you, you'd get all that extra time to work on it. And speaking of your long arm and that kind of thing, um, I had another question that generated in my mind here, and it just went, oh yeah, you were talking about, having your ankle replaced and everything and how hard it is. And I think a lot of people don't realize, who don't own long arms, that it is physically tearing at you. I mean, you
Mhm.
stand there in front of the machine, and if you're doing free motion as well, you're running this big gigantic thing around in the whole bit. It pulls in your shoulders, your back, your legs. It is a physical workout. So
Mhm.
yeah, you do need things to make it comfort. I got a padded uh type of mat in front of mine because I was finding it was
Yeah.
on concrete. And you
Yeah.
need that cushioning. Uh you don't think of these things until you actually work on something like a long arm. So have you ever belonged to any kind of like guilds, in person or online teams or groups? And how'd that work out?
Forever, 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 forever. I really do believe in that, like, community involvement with quilting because I think you get so much inspiration. If you work in isolation, it's like you kinda get stagnant, at least I found that, especially
Yes.
during the pandemic, and I think that's why we went to a lot of online platforms was because we wanted to see new things, and I think it just keeps you creatively, um, more interesting as an artist.
I think.
So yeah, so I was involved with the Windsor Quilters Guild. I've been involved with the Erie Shores Quilters Guild when I was there. Now I'm in Waterloo, so I'm involved with the Waterloo's Quilters Guild. I just rejoined them, and I've always been involved with the Elmira Needle Sisters as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I write for the Burning International blog, but also for QuiltSocial.com.
Okay.
So, that's kind of like online platforms where you're seeing what other people are doing as well. So, yeah, I've always been involved and I really believe in that. I think that's
Now, these guilds that you belong to, or these groups you belong to, are they in-person kind of things, or are they all now done by Zoom?
the Waterloo Guild has a, what do they call that? Kind of a modified, since the pandemic, they have both online and in-person platforms. Now, I've only done the online so far, but apparently they're back to meeting and greeting. And prior to the pandemic, I was very involved with them.
Yeah.
So
But you
yeah.
are very right. To quilt in isolation or do anything creative in isolation is a lonely experience. And just by meeting other people, whether it's in person or on a Zoom call, the whole bit is very inspirational. And I think if there's one thing good that came out of COVID, I think it was how we as a society embraced the whole Zoom type platform.
Mm,
I know that I don't want to go to a retreat, in-person retreat anymore. I love doing the Zooms because I can't forget anything and everything is at my fingertips. And I'm still seeing other people and they're showing what they're working on and we're talking about stuff. So I really love the electronic communication or method of it. And yeah, but you're right. You need to be around other people or you'll get stagnant, really.
yeah, you will. You really will. Yeah, it's been really important for me and my growth as as a quilt artist. Yeah.
So, do you have any favorite stores for supplies, or are you get most of your stuff online?
No, I don't buy very much online. I bought some things online, especially during the pandemic, but I teach at Creek Bank Sewing in Mount Forest,
Okay.
and they're a wonderful store. They're also a Bernina dealer, but they're a wonderful store and very helpful with their customers. So I've been like, whenever I'm teaching somewhere, I'm kind of dedicated to that store. But I also think there's like Kawartha Quilting is a wonderful store as well. There's a lot of other fantastic thimbles and things. I think it's in Aurelia. They're wonderful as well. There's lots of local quilt shops, and I really think that everybody who's in an area, they should always seek out whatever their local quilt shop is, because they'll always have the very good quality equipment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you're someone who likes to feel fabric, you can't feel that through your computer
Yeah.
screen and
You
that kind.
can't. Yeah.
But it's good to support the quilt stores, the local quilt stores too, because they're dying,
Mhm.
because of online shopping. And I mean, that was very apparent with the number of vendors that were at Quilt Canada this time. They were
Yeah.
definitely down in numbers from previous years, I think. And I think a lot of that
Yeah.
has been because they've gone to online. And why lug all your stuff to a show when you have a clientele that are very comfortable ordering from you online? But I still like getting into the store and, feeling the fabric and seeing what's new and talking
Yeah.
to the people working there and things like that. I have a good relationship with
Yeah.
my local quilt store. And, it's not just purchasing, it's not just business, it's social too.
It
With
is. It is. And
so
it's a sort of inspiration, just like your groups, right? You go
yeah,
into a quilt shop, you see something new and a new pattern and a new technique
exactly.
you want to try and take a class and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
true.
Country Concessions in Cookstown was the other place I thought of. That's a great store as well.
I've
Yeah.
been there too.
Yeah.
With that. So, speaking of inspiration as well, do you have any favorite experts or sources of inspiration or information that you go to on a regular basis?
Um, hmm.
It's a difficult question because,
Yeah, I mean, I think Mr. Google.
yeah, yes,
I mean, I go online if I have a question about anything with the technique, and I'll look on YouTube. I'll look, I'll see what you have to say about things, and I'll look at other people's um, YouTube channels,
yeah,
I sort of, because I work from home. Oftentimes, that's my instant access
yeah,
to information.
yeah, it
And
is.
so I would say, yeah, that mostly the online for the quick access for information. If I'm really stuck on something with a machine, I'll go to my local dealer.
Mhm.
I'll call them. Um, but for the most part, and then I also find, like, my guilds that I belong to too. If I have a question, sometimes I'll pose it to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, pulling from a great pool of knowledge and expertise, through guilds and that. But you're right, Google is your best friend. I mean, if
Mhm.
I had started quilting back in the 80s or the 90s, well, where would I get the information? I'd have to take a lot of classes, which I like classes on everything, but I go to the library, look for
Mhm.
books. Now it's your library is right in front of you. You just, hey, I wonder how I do that. Type it into Google and you're going to find something for
Mhm.
sure on that. And you can go down the rabbit holes as well as you're
Yeah.
looking in that. You sit down for 20 minutes, you get up 2 days later from the.
Exactly.
Um, so let's talk then about your channel, about your business. So
Mhm.
YouTube channel is called Quilting in the Loft,
Mhm.
and I will put the link for that in the show notes when this goes live on YouTube.
Mhm.
But let's talk a little bit about when you started it. How long have you had a YouTube channel?
I've had a YouTube channel. I think it was 21, not very long.
So you,
I just kind of did it because I have my sister who's become involved with quilting since 2015. She retired, and so she wanted to learn to quilt. She calls herself my BM, or business manager.
yeah,
She said, you have so much to share. It's the pandemic. Why don't you do some YouTubing? And so, is that a term? I'm not sure.
yeah, I
Um,
guess it can be anything we want it to be.
yeah. Why don't you put some stuff on YouTube and share, and I am really all about sharing. I love to, like, do a demo at a guild, offer to help out that way. And so I decided I would do I was doing these little she shed blocks, little house blocks.
Mhm.
And my sister said, why don't you do that as a demo, as like one of your first demos on, ended up making it into a commercial pattern. And then I actually did a demo on YouTube. And then I did an add-on to that, which was a log cabin she shed where you add a log cabin block around the little house block. And that's a free online demo as well. And yeah, so that's how I got started with YouTube. Yeah.
So
And
you're
then I'm not really as active as I should be on YouTube. I have about, it shows 10 videos, but there's about 14. There's 4 that are like teaching related
right.
that are private access. Um, it takes so much time and I feel like
Yes.
I'm busy with other things. And like I can appreciate what you do, Stephen, because the time it takes to do YouTube is incredible.
Well, you have to enjoy doing it. That's the only
Yeah.
way you can get around, because yes, it
Yeah.
does take a lot of time, but I enjoy doing it as part of my hobby, things that I
Yeah.
like to do. So yeah. But
Which I applaud you for because you do
so
so much of it. And it's great.
well, thank you. Now, what I'm going to say is, so my next question is, do you have any challenges or goals for the future? But let's focus though, first of all, on your YouTube channel.
Mhm.
After what you've just said about time and that, do you have any ideas for the future for expanding it or making it more into like a teaching tool?
Well, it kind of is a teaching tool now, and I'll probably continue to do that. I do want to do more videos. So sometimes I'll do like a blog post and then I'll put a video about it. Like just recently I did one for Quilt Social and I did a lampshade tutorial online to how to
Oh, that
cover a lampshade. So I am going to use it that way. I kind of don't like to put rules on myself or pressures on myself
right,
because I feel like if I set really specific goals, if I don't achieve them, then I feel bad about that. So I'm just trying to use it to the best of my ability to share and not to make it too formal. But I
right.
do plan on doing more on YouTube. Yeah.
So then let's talk a little bit then about your business, because you do have a business. So I assume that your business involves doing long arming on other people's quilts. Um,
Yes.
so how's that working out for you? Are you in major demand in your area?
Yes.
You're busy all the time then.
Yes. I'm busy pretty well all the time. I always have a list of quilts to get completed. Um, so right now I'm booking to September to get quilts finished. So that's keeping me busy. I'm also teach a lot and I do trunk shows.
Mhm.
So I'm usually working on teaching samples. Like right now, I'm working on my new class for the fall on long arm and domestic machine ruler work, um, free motion ruler work. So I'm doing a sunflower. So that'll be a pattern coming up soon, a commercial pattern. So I'm often like doing my long arm work for customers, and then I'm doing teaching samples. Um, as I said, I'm writing for the Bernina International blog and then writing also for quiltsocial.com. So a lot of those things, they keep me out of trouble,
Yeah.
but they also keep me very, very busy. And
Yes.
I kind of have to be very careful about scheduling because I still want to meet my demand with customers and their quilts.
Right.
And bottom line is I want to do a good job. So I don't want it to be rushed.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm quite busy and quite happy with what I'm doing and happy to be at home. I'm not bored for 1 second. Um, you
And
know,
that's a good thing, I think,
yeah.
especially like for
And I
someone like
retired myself from social work.
yeah.
So, this is my full-time gig.
Yes,
Um,
I know, and that's the
mhm.
thing about being retired too. A lot of people they don't have any real interest. They end up sitting in front of a television set, and sadly, one day they wake up they're dead. And
Yes.
when I retired 11 years ago from being a high school teacher, I said I was not going to be one of those people, but I'd always had hobbies, so it just developed, and of course, I just fell into quilting. But that's a
Mhm.
story for another day. But I was going to say, when you say you develop patterns, you have patterns. If someone wants to buy one of your patterns, where would they go?
They go to my website, quiltingintheloft.com. At the top, there's a whole menu, and they can click on shop. and they'll see downloadable patterns, which are the purchasable ones. And then there's free downloadable patterns, and there's a whole bunch of little techniques, um, little projects that are free as well. So they can go there and they can check out whatever commercial patterns I have, as well as the free downloadable ones. Yeah.
And I
So
will put that link into the show notes as well, because I believe I have it right here. I do.
mhm,
Quiltingintheloft.com, because you gave me your
yeah.
business card. So
Yeah. Okay.
so I have all that information, which
Yeah.
I will include as well. And as
Yeah.
for people taking classes with you, is that just solely done through local quilt stores,
Yeah,
or?
I'm currently teaching at Creek Bank Sewing in Mount Forest. I am taking a list. I only have a small space in my domestic area. I do sometimes, if someone's a beginner and they really want to take classes, I'll take their name, and then when I get a couple of people together, I will teach a private lesson. But I don't have as much time for that now.
Right.
So, but I still take names, and then I call people when I have some time available for a beginner class, and that's a beginner piecing class, to
Okay.
really get people into the fold.
Yes. Yes. The recruitment thing.
Yes.
Come.
Yes,
To show
and
you
but I
this.
teach at Creek Bank Sewing in Mount Forest, and, anywhere else anybody wants me to teach, I will teach. I teach for guilds as well, so oftentimes I get asked to come and do a trunk show, and then the next day I'll teach a class. So yeah, it just depends on, also, forgot to say too, I do my, trunk show on Zoom if guilds are too far away and they don't wanna pay the extra mileage. So I will do it on Zoom as well to save them some
Yeah.
coin
And if a
on
guild
having
wanted
a trunk show artist.
you to do a trunk show or something else for them, to reach out to you, would they go to your website, or I
Yeah,
know?
they can go to my website and they can just click on contact, and the
Okay.
email comes directly through my email system, and they can get in touch with me there. Yeah,
Okay, great. So all
yeah.
that information will be in the show notes for this interview, so if anybody that's interested. So, have you got any challenges or goals for the future in general?
I would like to spend a little bit more time doing my own personal quilts.
Hmm.
And eventually, I want to put something into competition. I know we were recently at Quilt Canada. I don't compete very much. In fact, very little. Only because of, again, I want the joy of what I'm doing to overwhelm perfection.
Yeah.
But I do think I've honed my skills enough that I could compete. And so that's sort of like a down the road future goal rather. Um, Yeah, but I'm not also gonna put a huge, like, timeline on that. I just at
Right.
some point, I'd like to be able to do some more of my own personal quilting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. So now, my last question is: do you have any advice for anyone who wants to get into quilting? But you have given us one piece of advice already that I like, and you just said it. And hope I get the word right. You said don't want you want joy to overwhelm perfection. I think that's
Correct.
how you right.
Mhm,
And I like that turn of
mhm.
phrase. So if I'm interpreting this correctly, you're saying you got to enjoy the journey. Don't
Mhm.
worry about, don't stress yourself out over, getting into a competition or being absolutely perfect. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people who get into quilting and don't stick with it, because their
Mhm,
first quilt is not perfect and they get
mhm.
disillusioned with it. But is there any other advice that you can give to someone who wants to get started into quilting?
Yeah, and when I say that too, I don't wanna say, like, um, do everything fast and just enjoy the process and don't do a good job. I still want people to hone their skills, and to take classes, and that's really, I mean, I'm very biased. I'm going to say that up front because I do teach classes, but I do think that every single class I've ever gone to, I've learned something in them. Even if it's I'm doing a class that, like, is basic, there's some little tidbit of information, and if I pick up one little tidbit of information, I think it's worth it to take classes. So I would recommend to anybody new in quilting to take classes, because there's lots of people out there that are very skilled that can teach you lots of things, and you'll get to the point that you actually are very skilled yourself if you take classes and really learn to do things the proper way. You can learn a lot on home and by Mr. Google.
Yeah.
But there's nothing quite the same as someone actually tactily showing you, how to do the binding a certain way, or how to piece and overlap your seams or to press them in one way or the other. It really does make a difference if you take classes.
Yeah.
And by saying that, I'm saying support your local quilt
Yeah.
uh, stores as well. Yeah.
Well, I would agree with you about taking classes. I took a lot of classes. I still do. There's always something that you will pick up and learn. And not only that, but a good class and a good teacher will encourage you. So,
Mhm.
they'll make it, if you have self-doubt or you think you can't do something, usually the teacher or the other people in the class will come to your aid and say, no, 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 you can do this. Don't worry about it so much. And that in itself, I think, helps keep you motivated and interested in what you're doing. So before we leave, do you have some parting words or anything else you'd like to say before we say goodbye?
I just think if you're hesitant about quilting, you should just dive in.
And I
It's a
think that's
great
excellent.
world of artistry. It's been a fantastic outlet for me. And working as a social worker, I had a lot of stress in my job. So to come home and to actually sit down and do a little English paper piecing or sit at my sewing machine on a weekend literally saved my sanity.
Yes.
So
And
I think
you're
if
not,
anyone's hesitant and they're not sure whether they want to get into it, they should just dive in
yeah, I
head first
agree.
and
Just
have a great time at it.
and you will have a great time in it.
Yeah.
It brings you joy. That's why you do it.
Yeah.
So, well, I want to thank you, Robin, so much for this interview. It's been delightful. You've given us a lot of food for thought. You've shown us lots of resources, and I encourage everyone to check out your YouTube channel, check out your website as well, and reach out to you if they think there's something that they can benefit from contacting you. And
Mhm.
yeah, so thanks again for your time. Don't go away from me, but because I'm going to stop the recording. But thanks again,
Mhm.
Robin. This was great.